What does a bowl of spaghetti and a violin concerto have in common? A lot more than you might think. Both require a mastery of conventional techniques and a dash of experimentation. I'm here at Sugo, one of Toronto's most popular Italian-American restaurants, to talk to Jonathan Crow, Concertmaster of your Toronto Symphony Orchestra. On October 25th, Jonathan will be taking the stage at Roy Thomson Hall to perform as soloist for Hungarian composer György Ligeti's Violin Concerto.
I'm Connor, and we're sitting here in Sugo, downtown Toronto. Like musicians, this restaurant allows me to share a story, a narrative. It allows me to share a little bit of my culture, of the neighborhood I grew up in, and it allows me to tell my story. Sugo's been open for about 6 years now. I love this neighborhood. I feel like I'm a part of it now, and happy to be here.
It's something that I love to perform because it's incredibly complicated, it's incredibly unusual. He brings all kinds of different ways of composing into it, but it's something that audiences get. And I don't personally understand it myself, but he manages to combine Renaissance music, microtonality, different tuning systems, incredibly complex rhythms. But when you listen from the outside, it all comes together in something which is actually kind of simple and which we understand on a visceral level. What I love about the music is that he doesn't try, well, it's not like he's not being adventurous, it's incredibly adventurous, but it's also based on something which is incredibly ancient and old and the progression of music from thousands of years. So as I said, he uses these old Renaissance type tunes. He uses tonality in a way that came even before the modern kind of 12-tone system that we hear in the piano in equal temperament. But somehow he combines that into something which is new and fresh and goes his own direction. Don't get me wrong, he's incredibly, advanced. And this music, people understand. Even though it's incredibly complicated, they get it. I would say it depends whether it's a piece that I know extremely well or whether it's something that's new. And these days, there's not that many concertos that come up that I haven't played a few times before at least, or that I learned when I was a kid. New pieces are really different, right? Because there's not that history. It's not like playing Brahms concerto, and you've done it a bunch of times before, and you can kind of rely on that. You have to start fresh. And this piece is a little bit of a mix for me because it's coming back to it for the first time in about 20 years, but it is something that I learned before. So as I've restarted, it's interesting what has kind of stuck with me. The really, really difficult stuff, it's kind of like it's still there a little bit. I have to practice it, of course, and like clean it up, but it's like I did good work on it, when I was 25. So everybody has to be going for their part all the time, and I think you can tell from the audience that this is going on, right? But he writes it in a way that you can't just sit back and accompany. You have to be into what you're doing in your own part, playing full dynamics, playing with excitement, with intensity, because otherwise you just can't get through the part yourself. There are moments where it says in the score, please drown out the violin part. And you can tell the trumpet player, the horns are like, okay, we have license now to do what we want to do, right? But in a way, it means that it feels like chamber music. It feels like a large chamber piece on stage where everybody's contributing. I am actually playing the cadenza written by György, and he wrote it with Ligeti, right? So he got this material from the 3 movements that weren't used. He took kind of riffs from all the movements that are in there, and I feel like in a way this is the closest connection to the composer that you can get. The violinist that premiered the piece 3 times, that was writing it, Ligeti was writing it with György in a way, knowing what György could do, and for me, I like it because it shows this connection to Ligeti. He has microtones, so you have natural horns playing, and as they go higher and higher, they actually get out of tune compared to what we would have on the piano. You have the principal viola and the concertmaster playing scordatura, which means that they're tuned differently, right? One of them is tuned a little bit sharp, a little bit flat, and those tunings are based on overtones from the double bass. So in theory, there's these resonances, again, which are not like a piano, but that kind of makes sense. He takes old ways of writing. There's a Hocket, there's a chorale, those Renaissance music based on a piece he wrote himself, right? And you can research all of this and it's really, really exciting. You also don't need to know any of it to get the piece because it all comes together. So you can go into it wanting to study it, wanting to know it beforehand and understand more. And on a certain level, it makes great sense. And you can see all these things coming out. Or you can never have listened to it. You can go to it and think, I just want to hear a cool piece of music, something that reaches me, and it does, right? And that's the great thing I think about these great compositions. There's so many layers that you can understand them. It's not just about the academic or intellectual way of listening, but there's also something emotional and visceral that gets you. I find it interesting the way some composers become less modern as time goes by, and some almost become more modern. Yes. And I'm thinking, we just performed Stravinsky's Rite of Spring a couple of weeks ago. I'm thinking the Rite of Spring was written over 100 years ago, but when you hear it now, it could have been composed yesterday. You still feel like it's something which is new and fresh and incredibly modern. And Ligeti's a little bit the same, right? It's like it could have been written yesterday and you wouldn't be surprised. It doesn't sound like, wow, 100 years old. And I think that's really cool, right? Great music that stands the test of time always feels like it's fresh. It doesn't feel like it's old. Music is music, right? We tend to try to place music into kind of like these clean little boxes. Well, this is modern music, and this is Baroque music, and this is classical. And I don't think there's any composer who's ever written a piece of music that's like, I want to fit it within this framework so that people understand what's going on, right? All great composers, with maybe the exception of Brahms, want to push the envelope. They're looking like, what can they do that's different? What can they do that shows their own stamp? Ligeti's the same, right? There's a basis in compositional style and history, but he's pushing that envelope, and I find it really fascinating to see where composers go differently and what they decide is kind of pushing the envelope.